So imagine you are the operations manager for a massive European transport fleet. You're sitting in this dispatch office, right? And you're overlooking a yard filled with just hundreds of these 40-ton trucks.
Yeah, quite the stressful view.
Oh, completely, because every single time one of those heavy diesel engines turns over, you're quite literally burning money.
Right. And for decades, the whole conversation around electrifying a fleet like that, going quote unquote green, it was always pitched as this sort of moral obligation.
Yeah, like a fancy PR move so the company looks good in the annual report.
Exactly. It was an environmental choice, sure, but everyone understood it to be a costly one. Like it was essentially a tax on your bottom line.
Well, but today's deep dive into our source material, it flips that entire assumption completely on its head.
It really does. It takes that old, tired narrative that sustainability is inherently expensive and just dismantles it using, uncompromising mathematics.
Our mission today, for you listening, is to unpack this really fascinating presentation we received. It focuses on the economic and strategic analysis of electric transport across Europe.
And the data we're looking at, it proves that the tipping point hasn't just arrived, it's already in the rearview mirror.
Right. We're going to discover how electrification in the logistics industry, it isn't about saving the planet anymore. I mean, it is radically revolutionizing the bottom line, and it's doing it country by country.
And what stands out immediately in these sources is the timeline. Like, we aren't looking at theoretical projections for the year 2040 or 2050.
No, no, no.
The data in front of us is analyzing the immediate, present-day reality of European freight.
There's this incredibly telling detail right near the top of the source deck. It boldly proclaims that electric transport is, quote, no longer an environmental choice, but an economic priority.
Which is a huge statement.
It is. And to really understand that paradigm shift, we're going to look at the hard, unforgiving math of what happens when a heavy-duty transport truck drives a standard 5,000 kilometers across 5 very different European nations.
But before we map out that geographical road trip, we really have to establish the baseline of where these financial savings actually originate.
Because it's not just swapping fluids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Transitioning a logistics fleet isn't just a matter of swapping a tank of liquid diesel for a lithium-ion battery pack. We have to, look under the hood at the hidden mechanics.
And the mechanical difference is staggering. While I was looking through the research, the best analogy I could come up with, it's like comparing watches.
Oh, okay.
So think about a traditional diesel engine as a classic, highly complex mechanical clock.
Right.
It has thousands of these tiny, fragile gears, springs, valves, pistons, and they all have to work in perfect synchronization.
Right, while being surrounded by highly combustible fluid and extreme heat.
Exactly. It's a nightmare of moving parts. Now, compare that to a modern electric motor, which is essentially, it's a solid-state digital smartwatch.
That's a great way to look at it. The architecture is just entirely different. And that simplicity, it translates directly to thermodynamic efficiency.
Right.
The presentation highlights that an electric motor converts over 90% of its energy directly into forward movement.
90%, wow.
Yeah. But a thermal engine, your traditional diesel truck, is inherently wasteful. It only converts about 30 to 40% of the energy from its fuel into actual motion.
And structurally, that massive gap makes perfect sense. In a diesel engine, you're losing, 60% of your energy just fighting internal friction and generating waste heat?
Yep.
So from a purely physics standpoint, a diesel truck is essentially a massive, incredibly loud rolling space heater that just happens to push some cargo forward as a byproduct.
A very expensive space heater. And that waste heat and friction is exactly why that mechanical clock of a diesel engine, inevitably breaks down.
Which brings us to the maintenance costs.
Exactly. The sources show a 30% reduction in maintenance costs for electric trucks.
30%.
Right. And when you manage a fleet of 500 vehicles, a 30% drop in your maintenance budget, that alters the entire financial trajectory of the company.
Let's actually break down the specific components that are disappearing to achieve that reduction, because it's fascinating. With an electric truck, you are eliminating oil changes. The complex fuel and air filters, gone.
All of them, yeah.
The heavy multi-gear transmissions are totally unnecessary. But for modern logistics, the real massive relief seems to be the elimination of exhaust after-treatment systems.
Oh, absolutely. Anyone managing a modern diesel fleet will tell you that systems like the DPF, that's the diesel particulate filter, and AdBlue injection, they are a constant source of headaches.
Because they just break down constantly.
That is how they operate. The DPF acts as a soot trap in the exhaust. And to clean itself out, it needs to reach incredibly high temperatures, which, usually only happens during sustained high-speed highway driving. But in regional logistics, trucks do a lot of stop-and-go urban driving.
So they never get up to speed.
Exactly. The filter never gets hot enough to burn off the carbon, so it clogs, the sensors fail, the AdBlue lines crystallize.
Which means the truck is suddenly sitting in a repair bay instead of actually delivering goods. And downtime is like the absolute enemy of profitability in logistics.
It's the worst thing that can happen.
So by stripping all of those moving parts away, the electric truck simply stays on the road longer. It is generating revenue instead of consuming repair hours.
And the operational benefits, they extend to the actual driving dynamics as well. The source highlights a feature called instant torque.
Right, I saw that.
Yeah, because there's no traditional gearbox to spool up and shift through. The electric motor delivers this fluid, immediate acceleration, even when the truck is hauling a full 40-ton load.
That smooth power delivery, it reduces the mechanical stress on the chassis of the truck over its lifespan.
Yeah.
And it also massively improves road safety and driver fatigue. You aren't, fighting a heavy transmission all day long. But there's another feature highlighted in the deck that really stood out to me as this brilliant operational loophole.
Which one was that?
Total silence.
Ah, yes.
Like, a quiet truck sounds like a nice luxury, but in European logistics, it is a massive economic lever.
It really is. If you consider the urban layout of Europe, you're dealing with ancient cities, narrow streets, highly residential historic centers.
Very tight spaces.
Right. And traditionally, heavy trucks are strictly banned from making deliveries at night because a rumbling diesel engine will just wake up entire neighborhoods. Noise pollution is heavily regulated over there.
But if you are running a silent electric truck, you unlock the ability to do night deliveries.
Exactly. You are suddenly accessing major cities during off-peak hours when there's basically zero traffic.
Which is huge. Your route times just drop exponentially. Your delivery efficiency skyrockets. You bypass the daytime gridlock entirely, and you have access to historic city centers without all those traditional noise curfews.
You are effectively doubling the usable hours of your fleet.
Okay, so we've established the mechanical superiority and the operational efficiency. But this baseline mechanical efficiency, it collides with local European policies to create wildly different financial realities.
Depending entirely on where your fleet is operating, yeah.
Right. So let's take that hypothetical 5,000-kilometer road trip, starting in what the data shows is the absolute outlier, which is Germany.
According to the source analysis, for a 5,000-kilometer route in Germany, an electric truck yields a net operational savings of 2,815 euros compared to driving a diesel truck.
See, I really had to look closely at the math on this one because those numbers felt suspiciously high at first glance.
They do jump out at you.
Right, because the deck shows the diesel fuel cost for that trip in Germany is 4,375 euros, and the electric charging cost is 1,560 euros.
Okay.
But if you just compare the cost of electricity versus the cost of liquid diesel fuel, the energy gap alone doesn't account for that massive 2,815 euro difference.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because the phantom variable in that equation is a policy lever called the Maut.
A moat.
Yeah, the Maut is the German highway toll system for heavy goods vehicles, and it is notoriously expensive.
Yeah.
It's calculated by distance and, crucially, by emissions.
Ah, okay.
So Germany currently offers a complete exemption from the Maut for zero-emission vehicles.
Wow. So out of that 2,815 euros in total savings, roughly 1,750 euros comes purely from not having to pay highway tolls.
Exactly. It's not just the cheaper electricity, it is the German government actively putting a heavy thumb on the economic scale.
It's a super aggressive intervention.
Very. The competitive industrial energy prices make electrification a solid choice, sure, but that massive toll exemption, it makes it an absolute necessity for survival in the German market.
There is this thumbnail image included in the source deck that really caught my eye. It features a big transport truck driving down the highway, and plastered over it in bold, striking red text are the words "future of trucking."
Yeah, I don't know that one.
And looking at the German data, it perfectly encapsulates how aggressive governmental policy is literally forcing the future into the present day. I mean, if a competitor is saving almost 2,000 euros per trip on tolls and you aren't, you will be priced out of the German logistics market within months.
You can't compete. But, and this is key, That 1,750 euro toll exemption is a localized policy cheat code.
Right.
If you drive that exact same truck across the border into France or Italy,
Yeah.
that specific mode exemption vanishes.
Is it gone?
Yeah, suddenly you aren't relying on government highway policy to save money. You're entirely at the mercy of the local power grid.
Which naturally transitions us to the actual baseline battleground here, which is the real cost of power. Let's look at France.
Okay.
In France, the electric truck saves about 1,605 euros over 5,000 kilometers. But in Italy, that savings drops significantly to just 880 euros.
That's almost half the savings just by crossing the border.
Exactly. Why the massive drop?
Well, this is a classic case of a nation's energy mix directly determining corporate logistics strategy. It all comes down to baseload power generation.
Okay, break that down.
So France has an energy grid that is heavily reliant on nuclear energy that provides them with incredibly stable, low-cost electricity alongside a really high penetration of high-power charging stations along all their logistics corridors.
So cheap, reliable electrons basically mean massive operational margins.
Exactly. And because nuclear power isn't subject to the wild price swings of, say, imported natural gas, a fleet manager in France can predict their fuel costs years in advance with incredible accuracy.
But Italy is different.
Very. Italy has much higher base electricity costs. The source specifically notes the diesel trip in Italy costs 2,700 euros, while the electric trip is 1,820 euros.
So the fuel gap is much tighter there.
Right. The analysis notes that Italy compensates for this tighter operational margin with localized purchase and maintenance incentives for green logistics.
Oh, I see. So it's a different philosophy entirely. France uses cheap baseload power to make the day-to-day driving incredibly cheap. But Italy uses upfront subsidies to help you actually buy the truck, but then the daily charging stings a bit more.
That's exactly it. And moving south, we see another brilliant adaptation to local geography. Spain boasts a 5,000-kilometer savings of 1,370 euros.
And the presentation attributes this to what they call solar synergy, right?
Yes.
This concept is just fascinating. Southern regions like Spain have abundant sunshine. And logistics companies, they generally own massive warehouses.
Huge amounts of square footage.
Right. And a warehouse is essentially acres of completely unused dead roof space. So what the logistics companies are doing is outfitting those massive rooftops with solar arrays. They are self-producing their own commercial electricity.
It does require a significant upfront capital expenditure to install the panels, obviously. But the return on investment in a climate like Spain's is incredibly fast.
Because they're charging on-site.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Trucks can charge directly from the warehouse roof while they're sitting at the loading docks taking on cargo.
You are creating the ultimate closed loop. You aren't just buying a truck, you are essentially becoming your own oil refinery.
That's one way to put it, yeah.
I mean, once the solar panels are paid off, the marginal cost of fueling your fleet drops to near zero. You are practically printing your own fuel.
It makes electric transport extremely advantageous in regions that can harness that solar synergy, isolating the company from utility rate hikes entirely.
Which brings us to perhaps the most complex data point in the entire presentation. Let's talk about the Polish paradox.
Oh, yeah.
Because the electric savings in Poland for our 5,000-kilometer trip is 1,360 euros. It's right up there with Spain.
Right. Now, Poland's national energy grid is famously reliant on coal. It requires massive decarbonization. But Poland is also incredibly important because it currently operates the largest logistics and transport fleet in all of Europe.
They're a massive hub.
Yeah, they act as the major freight bridge between Eastern and Western markets.
But I have to push back here for a second because looking at this source data, charging a massive 40-ton battery off a coal-fired grid it feels like a shell game.
Oh, so.
You're just moving the exhaust pipe from the back of the truck to a smokestack outside Warsaw.
Right.
Like, how is electrifying Europe's largest fleet on dirty power actually a win?
From a pure immediate emissions standpoint, that is a completely valid criticism.
Right.
But the data here is highlighting something much more powerful than environmental idealism. It's showing pure market forces. Even with that fossil fuel-heavy grid, the base operational costs of electricity in Poland are so incredibly low that the economic math heavily favors electric trucks.
Oh, I see. The sheer economic advantage of cheap industrial electricity is forcing the greening of the transport vehicles themselves, even before the power grid itself is fully green.
Exactly. The economics are leading the environmentalism. Fleet managers in Poland aren't adopting EVs to save the planet. They're doing it because saving 1,360 euros every 5,000 kilometers is literally the only way to remain competitive.
That makes total sense.
And the best part is, once that massive fleet is electrified, every incremental improvement in Poland's power grid, like every new wind turbine or solar farm that comes online, instantly makes the entire logistics sector greener without requiring any further changes to the trucks themselves.
Wow. Now, if you're listening and wondering how this grand European tour impacts you, someone who, might not own a freight company, just think about your last grocery bill.
It all connects back.
It really does. Let's synthesize the macro level data we just discussed. A hypothetical 25,000-kilometer pan-European tour, driving 5,000 kilometers in all 5 of those nations, yields a net operational savings of 8,030 euros compared to a diesel truck.
8,000 euros in savings for just a few months of driving for one single truck.
Right.
Now multiply that by a fleet of 500 trucks operating over a 7 to 10 year lifespan. You are looking at tens of millions of euros in reduced operational overhead.
And logistics costs are baked into the price of literally every physical object you buy,
Right.
from the fresh produce in your kitchen to the smartphone in your pocket.
Absolutely everything.
When the cost of moving goods plummets like that, it fundamentally alters the consumer pricing landscape. Companies that cling to diesel, they just won't be able to compete on shelf price, and they will eventually be driven out of the market.
The presentation also outlines these massive strategic advantages that go far beyond the direct cash savings at the fuel pump.
Like what?
Well, for instance, image branding. Corporate partners, massive global retailers, and everyday consumers are actively rewarding logistics companies that can provide zero-emission supply chains.
Oh, there's a great visual in the presentation that highlights this beautifully. It shows 2 of these tiny, ultra-compact Silence SO4 electric urban cars.
Oh yeah, those little microcars.
Yeah, and they're parked tightly together on a narrow European city street. It's a striking visual reminder that the quote-unquote green branding advantage, it works at all scales.
From a massive 40-ton rig blasting down the German Autobahn all the way down to a microcar doing last-mile delivery of a parcel in a crowded alleyway.
Major brands want their logos associated with clean, silent logistics.
Definitely. And another critical strategic advantage outlined in the source is access to ZEZs, or zero-emission zones.
Right, city centers.
Yeah, major European cities aren't just politely asking for cleaner air anymore. They are drawing hard lines on a map. They are implementing policies stating that if your vehicle produces exhaust, you simply cannot enter the city limits without paying a punitive daily entry tax.
Or you might be banned from entering altogether.
Exactly. So having an electric fleet isn't just about saving fuel. It's quite literally your ticket to access the most lucrative, high-density delivery markets in the world.
Because if you run diesel, you essentially have to stop at the edge of the city and hand your cargo over to a competitor who actually has the electric vehicles to make the final delivery.
Which is terrible for business. And the source brings up a final point: geopolitical independence.
This is a huge one.
In the context of global logistics, this might actually be the most profound strategic advantage of all. When a transport company runs on diesel fuel, their profit margins are completely at the mercy of global oil volatility.
Right, a geopolitical conflict on the other side of the world, or a supply chain bottleneck, or an embargo, any of that can spike the price of liquid fuel overnight.
In an instant.
And that volatility can wipe out a logistics company's profits for the entire quarter. You simply cannot budget long-term when your primary operational cost fluctuates wildly based on international news.
But by transitioning to electricity, especially if it is stabilized by a local nuclear baseload like in France, or entirely self-produced via solar panels like in Spain, you are insulating your entire business model from global geopolitical shocks.
You are taking back absolute control of your core operational costs.
And predictability is the holy grail of fleet management.
It really is a masterclass in how raw economics drives systemic change faster than any moral plea ever could. We started this deep dive looking at a presentation that promised to show us how electrification is revolutionizing profitability.
And the hard math across those 5 nations proves the point beyond a shadow of a doubt.
From the silent, maintenance-free mechanics, to navigating German toll exemptions, to leveraging Spanish warehouse solar grids, it is abundantly clear why the era of diesel trucking is coming to a close.
It's just inevitable at this point.
So I want to take a moment to say a huge, genuine thank you to you, the listener, for coming along on this European road trip with us today. The fact that you take the time to engage with these complex topics, to look past the surface level headlines and really understand the mechanics of how global industries are shifting, well, it's what makes creating these deep dives so incredibly rewarding. Thank you for bringing your curiosity to the table.
It is an absolute privilege to unpack this kind of transformative data with an audience that actively seeks to understand the nuances of the bigger picture.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to ponder on your own. We've seen today, indisputably, that transitioning to electric trucks is an undeniable economic priority, one that frees massive logistic supply chains from their historical dependence on liquid oil.
Right.
So, consider this. If the largest transport fleets in Europe, and inevitably, soon the rest of the world abandon diesel not out of environmental goodwill, but purely for the sake of their own ruthless profit margins. Wait, I shouldn't say it like that. If they abandon it for their profit margins, how will that inevitable massive permanent crash in commercial diesel demand reshape global oil geopolitics? We'll leave that with you to think about. Until next time.